Okay, let's look at role management and role-based access control best practices here. Clearly, role management is not an easy thing, and we always get asked about questions. So, how many roles should we have? How should we cover our organization with job roles? How many people should be in a role? So, questions like this come to the surface all the time. Before we go there is a much more important idea here. As I mentioned at the very beginning, enterprise job roles is not a linear thing. It's something that you're going to do over and over again. It's not like I'm going to do my enterprise job roles and I'm going to be done with my project. It's a continuous iteration, almost like a cyclical process. So, how do you go about this? It's a closed loop process that I basically mapped out when I talked to a lot of our IT clients that have been through some activities here in role management. The first step is clearly developing and updating a role-based access control vision. What this is, it's really a PowerPoint presentation at your company for the internal use and basically talking to the business stakeholders in your company. So if you're not able to get to success, ask yourself the question, do I have something like this? Do I have a presentation that highlights how we should do this and basically how we should quantify the benefits out of role-based access control? So if you can build this, you're probably very much closer to success here than most of the companies that have not spent time on doing this. The next step is gathering requirements. It is impossible to get the results in enterprise role management if you don't know the problem that you're trying to solve, if you don't know what business problems the users you have in your enterprise. So in order for you to be successful with user account provisioning, you have to actually solve real problems for the business. For that, you have to gather requirements, right? So if the gathering requirements is really sitting down with business people, stakeholders, figuring out what their problems are, what their issues are, and trying to categorize and collect those requirements and pain points. The next thing is onboarding and applications and organizations. Obviously, you cannot just say that we're going to solve world hunger, as we say, and go with a big scope and solve all the problems and incorporate the entire company and organization in enterprise role management. You have to have some way of prioritization, right? And everybody has different ideas as to how applications and organizations that are part of enterprise role management should be prioritized. It really doesn't matter. There's multiple ways you can look at criticality of applications. You can look at whether an application is SOX critical or not, etc. At the end of the day, what this boils down to is that you have to have some method to your madness, right? That's another expression here. So it's basically you have to have some strategic and planned approach as to how you're going to onboard applications and organizations. So maybe you should look at call centers first, and then some back office workers, and then some IT support people. But you need to have some clearly understood logic behind why you're going on with the order with the applications that you want to put in scope in the order that you're going. Then you need to do role mining, right? You cannot really understand what people have access to, what their problems are, without actually having a true understanding as to what people really have access in that organization. Mining roles for everyone in the organization may not make sense, right? Maybe a process where you have a lot of just rework, and you have to be very sharply focused on the organizations or the applications that you have on in scope when you mine roles. It's also important to make sure that you may want to circle back to this gathering of requirements process and maybe take the mined roles or maybe take the mined entitlements to these business meetings, right? So the more you can prove to business stakeholders that you have meetings with, that you actually understand what people have access to, the more successful you're going to be here. The next item is adjusting roles. What this means that, once you you mine the roles and you define them automatically, you have to see how people, as a result of these mined roles, would gain and lose entitlements, right, in their jobs. If they kind of lose all their entitlements, that's not good. You're not going to be able to implement. If they gain a lot of entitlements, you have to ask yourself the question, is this the right thing to do? And obviously, you have to actually adjust the roles. So you have to sit down with the business users in these organizations, right, who are in scope, and adjust them appropriately. So it's basically, and again, a set of discussions with business stakeholders. Once you've done this, you have to actually certify the job roles, right? You have to sit down with the business people, with the business representatives, and basically ask them, is this something that you're going to be liking? Is this something that you can actually live with, right? If not, then you need to understand how can you change the role structure so that you only grant entitlements in the right way. So once business certifies these job roles, right, the next step is really certify access. Based on these job roles, you need to assign these roles to people, have the managers or application owners actually go into the application and certify the access for you for their people either in their organization or for their applications, and sign off on that electronically. At that point, you have all the internal, all the workings, right, all the mechanics nailed down of a role management system. You need to optimize business, and this is something that a lot of people forget, right? If you just do this enterprise role management as an IT project and you fail to recognize, for example, that in some part of the organization people are not doing anything, right? Or they are just doing much less than in another part of an organization, and you're not pointing this out to business stakeholders that they can use this information for potential reorganization or for improving the business, you only are doing your job halfway, and then people will not recognize all the benefits of all these, 7 steps before. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Next thing is really about how do you get to information, right? What are some of the existing repositories, existing areas where you can draw information from? And obviously the answer is fairly simple, but it's a lot of times difficult to see all these sources, right? So you got a lot of information in your HR system, right? You have some level of an HR system. It may be a custom database, it may be an Oracle HR, it may be SAP, it may be maybe PeopleSoft, whatever. But you can really look at where people are. A lot of people have built these job roles based off of some application level or ERP or mainframe roles. Whatever you have in SAP, whatever you have in Oracle, whatever you have in a mainframe table, right? I've seen people kind of looking at mainframe tables where they actually built an entitlement repository and roles. You need to look at that. Legacy workflows and help desk requests and desktop single sign-on or enterprise single sign-on. That's something most people ignore, right? If you have a ticketing system, you will see how people gained access to applications. It may not be trivial to see this, and you may have to do a lot of data transformation and mining in the help desk system, but you will see how people got access to what. Desktop SSO, things like Novell Secure Login or the Oracle Single Sign-On or Active Identity or Instantiate, the IBM Single Sign-On, they all provide logs as to what people accessed. If you can look at what people access, that's also a very valuable piece of information that you can look at. And finally, never forget people, right? You can always interview people, managers, HR specialists. Some companies even have employees who are actually responsible for granting access. They're onboarding clerks, right, who do nothing but grant the right level of access to people who join the company.